All right, I am going to start with warming up my water in my kettle on the stove. And for me, that's going to be just below a boil. What you'll find is that there are a lot of quote recipes where you're weighing your beans and exposing the grinds to a certain temperature of water for a certain period of time and all that kind of stuff. I've done all that and I don't notice enough difference to worry with it, and so I know about how much beans I need to put in my grinder, and the water is relatively the same. But a typical setup includes a paper filter, which I reuse these because the original guy, the guy who created it, says you can. So I do, but I'll wet this with hot water so it stays flat to the cap. But typically you're going to put the filter in there and place it on the bottom, and then set this on your container, and with the filter in there you're going to put in your ground beans, and then you're going to add water to it. You're going to create a slurry, and then you're going to add more water. But as most people notice, it begins draining from here as soon as you add water into it. And so there's going to be a certain amount of coffee that comes through that only had a minimal contact with the grounds. And so what is another technique, and is what I use, is called the inverted method. And everything's going to be the same. You wet your filter, you put that on, you put the plunger in though, and leave, actually that's not correct, you don't put this on first. You put the plunger in so that it's just inserted, so that there's just enough of a gap that it's not going to fall out. And then I'm going to put my grounds in there, and then I'm going to cover it with enough water to create a slurry, so a little less than half full. And then I'm going to use the stirrer to blend that 3 or 4 times to get it combined so that all the grounds are in contact with water. And then I'm going to cap it up to the top with water, and then I'll take my filter and put it on top, and then grab it in the middle and just invert it on top of my cup. That process usually doesn't leak because there's a vacuum inside. The water doesn't leave usually. And then I'm going to press this down into my cup, and then when it's done, I'm going to add a little bit of water at the end to increase the volume to about 8 ounces. So that's the process. While my water is warming, I will get set up here like that. I'm going to take my hand grinder, which is a burr grinder, and I'm going to fill the beans just to this divider here. For me, that's close enough to about 18 grams of beans, which is kind of a typical recipe. So I've got the beans into there. I'm not worried about specific weight, because if I weighed that, it would be within a gram or 2 of 18. So I'm checking my water. I did not keep an eye on that, and it got way to a rolling boil. So I'm going to leave it with the lid off for a second while I do the rest of this, just to cool it down a second. I'm just going to grind my beans. I like the hand grinder because it's just kind of a tactile experience with making your coffee, which is why I like the Aeropress. So the additional step of grinding the beans is just part of the experience. To me, it's like having to set the date time on your watch. It's just part of the relationship with the experience. So I know when this is done because it'll move freely. It does take a little bit of time. If you find that your beans are sticking to the bottom of the container, so that's done. If you find that your beans stick inside here, when you try to pour them out, it's just static electricity, and you put a little bit of water in the top of a drop or two is all it takes. So I'm going to just tap that a little bit to get everything out. The grounds are going to be uneven, so just give it a shake to flatten the bed. They come up to about right here. And then I'm going to add some water. Just cleaning my cup out. Actually, what I do first is wet the filter over the top. So I'm just putting a little bit of water, spreading around, letting it drip into the coffee. But I just want that to be flat and not move around. Just set that aside, and then I'm going to pour an undefined amount of water in here to create enough that when I stir it, I can blend the beans, the grinds, and make sure they're all covered. So I'm just kind of agitating this a little bit 3 or 4 times, and then I'm going to rinse that off so it's clean. And then I make circles around the outside 2 or 3 times, pouring slowly, and then in the middle, just to kind of make sure everything's distributed. I take it all the way up to the very edge, like that. And then I put the cap on. Get my cup ready, grab it in the middle, and you'll just flip it over. You can see it's starting to drip a little bit, but I don't hold it like that. And then just press it down. I use my forearm because it gives me a little more leverage. Just kind of lean on it, and you'll know when you're there. I don't press it at a certain rate. I just go slow and steady, make sure it's completely emptied out, let it drip a little bit. And for me, I know in this cup where about 8 ounces is, and so I'll just top this off with a little bit of water, and it's done. Now when I get done, I'm just gonna take this cap off, rinse the filter, put the filter in there, let it dry, plunge the grinds into the trash, and rinse it off.